Well, it's time to start doing the finishing in earnest, and I'm going to start with the shelves and then the sides and fronts, all the veneered work. I thought I'd just show you how I mix up my shellac. Final product looks like this, kind of the color of gasoline as I remember it when I used to pump gas. That's about a 1 pound cut, meaning 1 pound of shellac flakes per gallon of denatured alcohol, which is the solvent. So I'm starting out with a pound bag of platina dewaxed shellac. I just like it better. It goes on easier. It doesn't clog up my sandpaper and just works better for me. And platina is just the color. This particular vendor, Shellac Shack, makes this very light shellac, calls it platina. Okay, so I simply put a pint of denatured alcohol in here, pour it into my mixing jar, put the mixing jar on the scale, set to ounces, and then start putting in flakes of shellac. And these are just flakes. It's hard to see, but they're kind of ground up by now because I've had this a while, but they come as flakes. Put the flakes in until I'm reading 2 ounces on the scale, and then I simply shake it up. If I don't allow the shellac flakes to settle on the bottom into kind of a big congealed mass, by just giving a little stir every once in a while as I walk by, I can get those flakes to all dissolve in a couple of hours. If I let it become a solid mass, then it might be the next day and I'm still shaking like crazy to get the alcohol around all the little particles. So that's what we do. Okay, then I take oh, by the way, because it's dewaxed, there's no sediment on the bottom, anything like that. I go ahead and I just pour it into my little application trough. Take a piece of cotton, make it into a pad. This is an old t-shirt. And saturate the pad, squeeze it out, and then just apply like this. Now, I'll put on probably about 6 coats normally to get, a really nice finish. The first 2 coats I'll go put on back to back with no sanding. Then I'll come back and I'll sand with 220 grit. And then I'll put a coat on. I'll work myself up to 320, 400. A lot of times I'll just stop at 400. If I want a really, really smooth finish, I'll go to piece 600. 600 is as smooth as I ever go. And between coats, probably takes about 20 minutes for a coat to dry. It's not very long. You can get all the finishing done on a small piece in a day, no problem. And of course, with all the real estate I've got to finish, it's going to take longer than that. But that's all there is to it. I'll be careful not to finish any place that I need to glue so that the glue can penetrate into the wood. And that's it. When I'm using the shellac polish, I usually like to do, about 6 coats, although to tell you the truth, I'm not really counting on this, but I can tell by the feel as we're getting close. And so, I started out with 220 grit sandpaper and put a couple of coats on, and then I moved up to 320, did a couple of coats. Actually, I think I moved up to 400 and did a couple of coats. So let's see, 220 for the basic, 320, 400. Yeah, so I don't know how many coats I've got yet. But anyway, I'm up to 600 now. This is my last final, and probably do a couple of coats after sanding with 600, and then maybe use a little, that white abrasive pad to get it just like I like it. Well, I'm getting ready to glue the corner pieces on. So this is just a dry fit up with some clamps to make sure the clamping is going to work on one corner. You notice I leave the piece a little long so I can cut them off flush, both on bottom and top. And it's kind of a Rube Goldberg of clamps, but it seems to be working. It seems like it's got this the way it needs to be. So I'll go ahead and put some glue on this, reclamp it, and I'll do one at a time. Well, I'm thinking now about the color of the top and base. It's fur, and if you just put the platinum, which is the patina, which is a super blonde shellac on that fur, it comes out to be this color, which is a little light, not really what I wanted. So I played around a little bit with putting different aniline dyes, which are soluble in denatured alcohol. And I realized that I can kind of make a glaze out of dye. So I put a couple of coats of shellac on, and then put some of the dye coat on until I get the color I like, and then I can continue to shellac over that, and like a glaze. So I played around with different. I used some little cardinal red, extra dark walnut, lemon yellow, dark mission brown, red mahogany. So I got a mixture that I kind of liked, and so this particular piece of wood, this is unfinished fir. That's no finish at all on it. On this side, I put I think 3 coats of shellac, both on the end grains and the flat and so forth. And then I tried a few different shades and finally came up with what I think is the right shade and did this whole piece with that shade. So I don't know how good the light is, but you can see there is a difference between the unfinished and the dyed. And then here's, that's right here is the just shellac straight on the wood. So you can see I was able to bring the tone down some, and there's a little bit of red in it, which is what I kind of was looking for. So I think I'm going to go with that. So I mixed up some. This is the mix. It's probably enough to do all that I need to do, but if not, maybe I should make up a little ahead of time. It's a whole lot easier to start out with enough than to try to match later on. Well, I'm going to go ahead and drill the attachment holes for the the bottom, you know, the base and the top. So I've already done the base here on the pulpit. It's pretty straightforward, just 4 screws. I'm not too much worried about a lot of expansion and contraction, you know, in the short distance between those screws. And those are 3-inch screws, they're number 14, so they're going to really hold good. Now, for the top, it's a much bigger piece, and so I am worried about expansion and contraction. So what I'll do is I'll put 2 screws here, which would be the center. Okay, the grain is going crossways, so you won't see much expansion and contraction like this. So 2 screws there, and there'll be flathead screws coming up from the bottom, and no slots or anything, just firmly attached. But on the 4 corners, I'm going to make a little slot and use a panhead screw with a big fender washer on the bottom. And with the slot, there can be a little bit of movement. So I've got 4 corners for slots, and then 2 here, 2 here. So what's that? 8 screws altogether. I think that ought to hold it pretty well. Well, I fiddled with getting this top centered as good as I could. Now I'm going to come up from below with a center punch and mark where the drill holes have to be. Okay, so all those holes are drilled. I think I used a 9/64 drill for these screws. These screws are, let's see, they're 2.5 by number 10 screws, and I've got these 1/8 inch holed fender washers that'll go on the cap screw that's in the slot, so it can slide. The fender washer distributes the pressure. But for the center holes here, I'm just using just a flathead screw. They'll come up nice and snug. Now, these screws are going in quite a ways, and the hole's kind of tight, so I'm going to pre-grease them. Got a little of this screw grease and drill these in, and so it's not so hard to drill from underneath, or to screw from underneath. All right, all the screws are screwed. Now I got to take it apart and finish the job.